We've heard from a Tea Party congressman about the absurdity of the budget deal. Now we'll hear from a Tea Partier in the Senate. Joining me on the telephone, another Tea Party champion, Utah Republican Senator Mike Lee. Senator Lee, we know you're traveling. I don't even know where you are, but we appreciate the fact that you can join us at this hour. Were you surprised to learn that, notwithstanding the $38 billion in cuts that the president concedes and Speaker Boehner is happy about, the government will still actually be spending more in 2011 than it did in 2010?
Well, sure. I mean, look, when you talk about cuts, you tend to assume that that means cutting something that you had previously spent. And so that is disappointing.
I mean, actually, what they're cutting, or what they did cut from, was what the president wanted to spend in 2011, which was more than $38 billion more than what was spent last time. So even with the cut, which has establishment Republicans crowing, not only will the government be spending more in 2011 than in 2010, they have to borrow another $1 trillion between now, the middle of April, and the end of September, just to tide them over. Why are establishment Republicans happy about this? What is there in this that should bring happiness to anybody who's concerned about debt and runaway government?
Well, I think there were a lot of people who were relieved at the fact that we averted a shutdown. And, you know, as I've said in the past, I don't think any Republicans on Capitol Hill want a shutdown. That's not the right way to operate government. But there may be a lot of people who were just so relieved at the fact that we didn't have a shutdown that they were happy about whatever came along. But when we look at the fine print and we discover things like what you've just described, it becomes alarming.
So we have an abyss that needs $14.3 trillion to fill it. If the agreement between President Obama, Speaker Boehner, and Majority Leader Reid is enacted by the Congress by the end of this week, that abyss in 6 months will be deeper by $1 trillion. And if the president's budget is enacted as he's presented it, that abyss will be $1.7 trillion deeper than that. If debt of this magnitude, almost unimaginable magnitude, is not enough to cause the Congress to say to the president, you can't borrow anymore and you have to spend less and you have to tighten belts all around, what will, Senator Lee?
Well, I think it is just that. I think it is the debt ceiling increase vote is going to be very critical to all of this. But I've maintained that we have to address that issue. We have to address the debt issue more generally at each stage of this process, not just in connection with the fiscal year 2012 budget, but also with what remains of 2011, right, and with the debt ceiling increase. Now, I happen to think, as you know, that the answers to all of these questions lead at the end of the day to a balanced budget amendment and to the fact that we need something in the law that can't easily be changed by Congress to tell Congress that it can't just spend more than it takes in every single year. I don't think Congress is going to exercise the discipline necessary to avoid this perpetual reckless deficit spending unless or until law prohibits them from engaging in that practice.
Right. Well, you understand the ways of the Senate far better than I do, and the good folks watching us now do. Do you really think that the Congress would pass a balanced budget amendment as a quid pro quo for authorizing the president to raise the debt ceiling? Because I just don't think that this Congress, especially with the Senate, a majority of Democrats, I don't think this Congress will get there. In fact, I'll tell you what kind of an amendment I'd like to see, one that would let the legislatures of the states veto spending by the Congress when it gets out of line. But no Congress is going to crimp its own style. No Congress is going to restrict its own freedom. Don't you agree?
Well, certainly with the kind of amendment you just described, I too, by the way, would favor that. I think that's a great idea. But I think it's far more likely that we're going to get a balanced budget amendment passed than something like what you just described. But here's the issue, Judge. Although it's going to be difficult, I think a lot of people are going to vote for a balanced budget amendment. A surprising number of people in both houses and in both political parties are going to vote for this because public sentiment is with us on this. Public sentiment is overwhelmingly against raising the debt ceiling, and it's overwhelmingly in support of a balanced budget amendment. And I think that just as we saw a lot of irritation by the voters about things like Obamacare and TARP, I think those things are going to look like a Sunday picnic compared to any vote to increase the debt ceiling. I think it'll be the kiss of death for politicians from across America.
Let's hope that you're right. Senator Mike Lee, travel well, and thanks very much for joining us.